Weeks of wood.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize for the late start of this meeting, but we had a rather long discussion in law enforcement concerning some recent happenings, shall we say, on the lake, and you'll hear more about those later. Right now, we do have a quorum. Are you the one that's answering for a all thing? Okay, I know we have a quorum. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Everybody had a copy of it to read. Does anybody have any changes?
Move to accept.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of the previous meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Fiscal actions report. Same questions.
Move to accept. Adam,
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the fiscal actions report. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We start right off with a presentation by the Lake George Association, and Randy's going to do it.
So I have a projector over here, so if commissioners want to slide off to the side to be able to see a little bit better.
You have a medical report to give first, Randy?
Thank you for giving me a few minutes here to talk about a project that we just started, basically. This is the I-87 stormwater ditch improvements. Like I said, we basically just started this. This is exit 22 in Lake George. I'm sure most of you, everyone's familiar with this. What we did is we looked at these asphalt ditches that run along the road here. I'm sure you've seen them. If you haven't seen them, once you see them, you can't unsee them because they're everywhere. So we, myself and Jim Whitmer from Soil and Water, we were part of the Champlain Watershed Improvement Coalition. We had a task to come up with 3 projects to see what we could, something that we needed to find funding for. Let's find it. So this was one of the projects. We wanted to take the stormwater ditches and remove that asphalt and let it then become, go into the ground. So we put some stormwater controls in there. We originally wanted to do a planning grant and come up with a plan, but when we met with DOT, they said, let's do it. Let's do it next year. Okay. So here's a shot of some of the stormwater ditches that received the asphalt. I forgot I had these in there. And like I said, they just carry the stormwater. This is from the ground about 3 feet wide. And they basically bake in the sun all day, and then when it rains or we have snow melt, it just conveys the stormwater very quickly to wherever it's going. Eliminating that, we're trying to get rid of, reduce some of the, trying to reduce some of the water that gets to the streams, and also get that into the ground, and again remove some of the nutrients by running it through vegetation versus just having it on asphalt. Here's a shot of, this is the exit 22 northbound. And this is the first site that we worked on, but will be the last of the photos that I showed. This was on July 3rd, 2019. So what we did is we applied to the Lake Champlain Basin Program for a grant. We ended up getting just over $86,000. And again, we're partnering with New York State DOT and Warren County Soil and Water. The New York State DOT cannot be a match because they're federally funded, so they're actually just putting in their time as part of their sort of routine stuff. They can't be reimbursed by the grant. The materials are basically all being covered out of the grant money, and some of the soil and water their time as well. Here are the hot spots we went out and we looked at. This is the exit 22 northbound, exit 22 southbound. Some areas here along the southbound lane. This is up by the rest area, and this is the exit 22 southbound on-ramp. And these are the priority sites that we found. We wanted to tackle first. Again, this was the first site here, and then this is the second site. I have most of my photos are from the second site. I was down in Nashville for the week of the first one. He's done there, so I don't have a ton of photos for that. I apologize. So basically what they do is they went through with an excavator, mini excavator, and then break up the asphalt. Again, we're working right here on the shoulder, and if you ever see a road closure or a lane closure, and anything, and it says slow down, slow down. Those trucks coming down and filled with wads and everything doing 75, it's close and it's scary. And these guys are getting out of their trucks in and out, just pull over and slow down. Just that's my little PSA, I guess, for the day. Again, just breaking up the materials here and getting it right into a truck right on one side of the road. They use an excavator and also use the front end loader to kind of speed things along. And yes, even with a broken hand, you can do some work instead of just supervising. Here we are putting in, this is a sediment basin, a concrete sediment basin. The TFG guys started to refer to it as a coffin. I don't know. But basically what it is you have it's a sediment trap. Sediment will come into that, it'll settle out here, and they can easily clean it with either a small excavator or their radar. And it makes it very convenient for them so that they keep the maintenance up, which is what we want. Here's a little aerial shot. Again, we have the basin in, and then this is now the asphalt has been removed, and just doing it in stages. Again, this is July 16th, so we're not. Once we get the ditch all cleared out, this is Jim Lieberman. Notice the stance. He's balancing, working on his floor at the same time he's putting this out. This is basically it's got the seed in it and also some fertilizer. It's called Progenics, and that gets sprayed in the ditch first. We also did on the other side. We put in what's called little blue stem. The highway guys want to have the little blue stem growing. It's the stuff we see that kind of grows about maybe 6 to 8 to 12 inches high. Gets kind of purpley towards the fall. What's great about that is it doesn't get much higher than that, and they don't necessarily have to mow it. So they really want to kind of regenerate this whole area with the little blue stem. So we're going to be putting that down here a little bit later on this side. They use all of it on the other side when they don't supposed to, but that's the agreement there. And then, so what goes on top of the Progenics and the seed is a Futera. Basically, it's a tackifier, and it's you take a toothpick, you put a toothpick, and you shred that up and get it wet, and it kind of holds moisture for a long time. That's essentially what this is, and what it does is it locks that moisture in place, and it just acts as a barrier, so that you can actually let stormwater flow over that, and it should basically stay in place. But we didn't do that. We put down rolled erosion control. We use basically it's got coconut fiber in it or straw and 3 layers of weave plastic that will allow stormwater to run over it and not erode anything, and will allow the vegetation to grow through that. And then we also have filter shocks to slow the stormwater down. And the idea is that if you have a slow storm like we had yesterday, where it kind of rained all day, very slow, a lot of that water is going to infiltrate right through the ground and never get to where it's going before. So that is the idea, is to remove that stormwater. Here we are on the exit 22 northbound, and this is actually plastic. Because we met with DOT a week before the project started, we couldn't get all the materials in time. So we had to put down plastic for a night because we weren't sure if it was going to rain or not. This was the best management practice. So if it did rain, we had a little bit of rolled erosion control. If it did rain, we had to get the plastic and then just continue on like it was the asphalt beforehand. That was removed the next day, as you can see here, and put in with the rolled erosion control when we got the product. And again, here's another sediment basin. Water would come in through here, leave the sediment would fall out. It would go into the riprap here, kind of slow things down a little bit more, and then get into the channel again. So if you drive by this in the next few days or a couple weeks, you should see grass starting to come through that. And as that, again, as stormwater flows through that, it will slow things down, it will infiltrate, and also we hope to remove some of the pollutants that it's carrying. I'm actually meeting with DOT. Jim and I will be meeting with them this afternoon to go over what's the next step. They have their little excavator that they were using, they can only use for 2 weeks, and then move on to a different region. So we're talking about, are we going to get a contract to do the work? Let's run the machine. So it's all sort of included included in the grant, so we can work that process through. But this is the exit 22 southbound on-ramp, so this will be the next site that we'll be working on, and we'll hope to have that done hopefully by the end of August. So keep your eyes peeled, and again, you see them working on the side of the road, slow down. That's all I have. Any questions?
Where did that water go?
So a couple of different, one on the 22 northbound, is heading towards the English Brook, and then we think the one at the exit 22 southbound on ramp, we think that went into kind of in behind the high school, kind of works its way down the north there a little bit. It goes under the overpass to outside, and then it goes under the north there. So we're hoping that it doesn't even ever get there anymore. As far as English Brook goes, quite a bit of water that gets to that from that location. And if we can remove some of that extra volume of water that gets there, that extra volume is getting around in the road and the road we need to well. So, the travel of the cool water, hot water,
Does this impact salt aside from slowing it? Is the salt going to be in any of the sediment? Is
Yeah, the only way that we impact the salt is not getting to the stream, it's getting infiltrated into the ground.
But if it infiltrates into the ground, we talked about that before, then it just becomes kind of part of the aquifer, and it just slows its process.
Right.
So it doesn't really help, it just delays that.
Yeah, it doesn't, there's no way to remove salt unless you're using reverse osmosis.
Okay.
Is there any continuing maintenance after you complete those sand catchers that you have?
Yeah, so basically it's the structure has what's in it, you pull the top right out, and with a simple braid all or even hand shovels and shoveling it into a bucket, just doing that on a regular basis. Pretty easy maintenance as far as the actual roll erosion control will just eventually 3 or 5 years from now will just kind of degrade, but the vegetation will be there and will get removed, and it's not shouldn't happen anymore. As well, so.
Maybe are there other areas that you're planning to work on in the future?
Yes, great question. So one of the reasons why DOT was so happy to do this is that these asphalt pitches are everywhere in the outlines. So once we kind of nail down the process of which we think we have a pretty good job of how to do this, it's going to be translated to other parts of New York State and it's not necessarily, this grant money is focused on Lake George basin only. So once we obviously use up this grant money, the DOT, the highway guys, they're looking at, we looked at a few other sites just on the other side of the road, and they already have the ideas. It's in their head now. They know what to look for. Hey, you can make this change right here. What do you think of doing this? So it's getting to other locations around the state.
How about the lake? After this grant money is done, how about the other side of the lake? Are there any areas that, around Pearl Bay, you would say that side of the lake?
Yeah, actually, you probably noticed the sediment traps going down 106 over. Those were put in a couple of years ago, and it's the same sediment, type of sediment trap. The same idea is to capture that sediment, slow it down, and let it infiltrate. All those swales along the 76, they're all vegetated already. So those are kind of doing what they're working. Yeah, and they're capturing material. But yeah, they come in 2 different sizes. The size that we put in, about 6 feet wide, about 6 feet long. It's a fairly large structure. They also created a half size. So basically, chopped everything in half for the smaller areas. We actually just had 3 put in over in Gull Bay with Gary Treadway. And it's a lot easier. It's easy for the highway crew. They installed 3 by 9:30 in the morning. So, and it's really easy for them to maintain, especially the smaller ones that can just use a shovel.
So, Randy, do you see over the last decade or so DOT being more engaged in these types of projects than the past?
Absolutely. The new regional engineer, is a big time fisherman. So he knows right away the benefits that this would have on the streams. And he said, he's like, let's tear it all up. Like, you don't need any of this. Why do they need to do it? And basically it was done so it was a quick way to get some water off the roads and get into the streams and you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, obviously, you know, like that. By doing what the things that we're doing, moving that asphalt, it'll be benefit to the stream.
Have you found any ways to keep these guys from picking out the ditches after they're vegetated in?
Well, sometimes they do need to be cleaned, but it's a matter, I think, Dean Moore from Soil Water, he works real close with the highways and trying to get them to not do it in November to scale. They're trying to get it done earlier so they can actually get the high cedar out and revegetate it. And then maybe in the future they can put in some of these sediment basins that will actually help to contain some of that and slow things down. So you're basically acting like a check dam. That's the stone check dams that you see. These are really easier to maintain. You want to remove that check dam every couple of years and just leave it for the sake of time.
Okay, good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Randy. Thank you for your hard work, too. I know you're the one guy in the LGA that works the hardest. Project review, resolution, action report.
Resolution 2019-32. Whereas the Commission has received and reviewed the Project Review Actions Report prepared by staff and dated July 8, 2019. Whereas the Project Review Committee recommends acceptance of the Project Review Action Report, now therefore be it resolved that the Commission directs the Project Review Action Report be incorporated in the minutes of the full Commission meeting. So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to incorporate the Project Review Actions Report and approve it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. First application and only application for a turboat operation, Class A Marina modification by Marino Charters.
So this is a joint application for a new tour boat. It's a fishing vessel and water taxi operated by Darren Marino. He's proposed to keep a berth at Halls and to operate from the Lake George Beach Club, which is currently Class A Marina. So this is also an application to modify the Class A Marina to add the subject tour boat. Mr. Marino's here, and I'd like you to the microphone to introduce yourself and explain the project a little bit. Thank you.
My name is Darren Marino. Like Joe said, I have a fishing boat that I run out of Halls. And I went to Joe and asked him if, all the proper paperwork I had to fill out. And, I will be at Halls. My boat is berthed there, and I will be picking up and dropping off customers at the beach club. There's a 20 to 30 foot spot on the end of the beach club where the owner Jose did not put a boat there this year. It was his own boat, and he had room there. So he presented me, he offered me to have that pickup and drop off there, which would be perfect for me since we're not doing the public docks anymore. And that's that. I read all my garbage will be brought back to Halls because that's my marina where I'm berthed. I get my gas all over the lake. Not just going to be. It's going to be in several areas. I have a bathroom on my boat, but I currently don't use it. It's for storage. So they will be using the bathroom at the beach club. Right outside the dock there's public bathrooms there. And where maybe an island where it's not people go and visit the islands for 5, 10, 15 minutes. They can go to the bathroom there. And I'm mostly a fishing boat. I've been coming to the lake for 35 years, and it's been a project of mine in my mind for a long time. and it's just been coming through for the last couple of years. And I started off with my family, my daughter, and it just kept going and going. So I figured, I paid all my fees. And I got my captain's license through the state. I got a PV 6-pack captain's license, and I went to see Joe and filled out all the paperwork, and now I'm here.
Any questions for you? No questions?
The only, well,
Go ahead, Bill.
in reviewing the application, the only question I had, and I think you've kind of answered it, was on the parking at the beach club. As I read the marina application, they said that they had 8 seasonal berthing plus the tiki boat, and I was looking at the schematic and doing my own math and saying, I don't see how this is all going to fit.
Yeah, when you pull out to the outside dock, the tiki boat, the last dock all the way to the right, the tiki boat is in front right side. Mm-hmm. You have a rather large boat on the left side in the back. I got 20, 30 feet in front of the large boat on the left side of tiki not being used.
And that's closest to the shore, according to this.
No, mine's going to be out. Mine's going to be, no, it's the opposite. Out towards the lake. There's a rather large boat parked to the shore right in front of the beach club. I'm going to be in front of him.
Okay. Well, this has it just opposite. This must be just.
Did I circle it wrong? I might have
No,
circled
this just must be. I'm just looking at the aerial view with the 2 docks and the 3 tiki boats on the north
Oh,
side.
there's only one tiki boat there.
Oh, this is an old one. Then.
It's an old one. Yeah, there's only one boat. So
Okay.
there's actually.
That's what I was wondering because they only have one this year.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
The beach club is going to approve a condition, or we're approving a condition where one of the beach club's slips is going to be replaced. Seasonal berthing is going to be replaced by this tour boat.
So when they said in the application on the marina permit, they said 8 seasonal berthings, and it said the tiki boat, I thought. And I didn't see how that fit. But
The seasonal berthing is going to be replaced.
they lose a seasonal berthing for the tiki boat, they lose one for this.
Right.
So it's 6 seasonal berthing? Is that what the marina ends up with?
So
They've got space for 8 boats in these 2 long docks. No more.
presently they're authorized for 8 seasonal berthing spaces, and the way the permit's written, they may replace up to 1 seasonal berthing place with the tiki, they may replace up to 1 seasonal berthing place with a parasail vessel, and as Joe mentioned, the recommendation from staff is that this would be, granted the same way approved, it would replace the seasonal berthing space, so that way we can ensure there's room on the docks to accommodate the activity.
Okay, and that brought up one other thing. They also use them for people who want to come into the restaurant, I thought.
I'm sure they are available for that. That's typical, like with the Algonquin and other restaurants. So I'm not sure how we would,
I don't believe anybody parks there to come into the beach club. He has nobody. There's no signs. I believe there's only a couple restaurants. I believe the Boardwalk, the Neptunes, Algonquin, maybe one other has actual signs. Park here for lunch. You get a ticket. You go in for lunch. Whoever you server is signs a ticket. You come back out. You give the guy, the dockhand, a tip or whatever, and then you leave. The beach club has no such sign, and I don't believe anybody. He has people. I pay for his slips there. I believe that's all. In the end of where the dock is. When you drive up, like I said, it's the last one. The tiki hut is on the right side, and he actually has room in front of him and behind. There's nothing on that side other than tiki, and I only got one boat on this side, and there's at least, my boat's only 20 feet, there's at least 30 feet for me to pick up and drop off. Perfect tie-off, and very safe for my clients.
And your primary, these are fishing expeditions, not
Some
boat ride?
Well, sometimes they get tired and they just want to see mountains, so I take them on tours and I show them around, and it's rather fun actually. And it all started off with my father and my daughter. They just wanted to see the lake, So if they just want to see the lake, they don't want to grab a fishing pole, or they just want to fish for 20 minutes and see the rest of the lake, and then it's a tour after that, But if you saw my boat, it's got a lot of fishing poles on it.
It looks like a nice one. Mr. Reno.
Darren, Where do you usually fish?
I fish, I come out of halls. So I start off,
But I assume you're not fishing for halls.
well, I'm actually fishing, I start off at halls, the docks there, actually plenty full fish there. But I fish the southern end, I very rarely go past the narrows. I get up to the narrows maybe sometimes if they want to. A lot of people that come, my family already knows about the narrows, but people that are not from Lake George, they go, hey, there's a place called the Narrows. Can we? Then I'll take them there so they can see it, and we might fish, and then we just come back. But it's very, I do a lot of the bays. I'm primarily a bass fisherman. I do have set up for downriggers for trout and salmon, but I'm a big bass fisherman. I have been, so there's a lot of bass from Halls to Long Island. I could stop in many places.
Okay, so just to make sure I've got this right, so that on the northernmost dock, on the southern end of that dock, close out towards the lake, that seasonal berthing is not going to be there, so you'll be able to just drive up anytime you want.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Any further questions? No. Anybody want to know where a good place to fish bass?
That's a private secret.
I don't mind. There's so many places.
You can almost drop your line any place in Lake George, you catch bass.
You pretty much can, actually. There's such a beautiful place. Like I said, my father took
bass fishing.
Yeah, I catch big bass. I mean, my father's been taking me here 35 years, but on the lake, so.
Well, I've been fishing a lot longer than that.
I'm sure.
Thank you very much. I don't think anybody
Thank
has
you.
any more questions. We're good. Anybody else want to, for the audience? Okay.
Thank you.
I think we're done. You have it.
Resolution 2019.
No, before that, does anybody have any
Anybody have
wants to discuss anything about it? I don't want to rush this.
Okay. Resolution 2019-33, application number 5222-40-19 SPT and 5222-39-19 M1 mod. Applicant is Marino Charters and Lake George Beach Club. Whereas the applicants have applied for permits to operate a tour boat and modify a Class A marina to add a tour boat, and whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record, and whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the activity and facility comply with the tour boat regulations of 646-1.2D and 2, and Class A marina requirements of 6 NYS 646-1.2B, and now therefore it be resolved that the Lake George Park Commission resolves to approve the above application with the following conditions: to ensure adequate dock space for operation of the subject tour boat, and consistent with the current parasail and tour boat authorizations at this facility, the subject tour boat operation at the Beach Club is approved with the condition that it is to replace one of the 8 seasonal berth spaces on the subject docks. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution is read. I have one question, and I don't remember anyone saying here. Did the Beach Club, I guess I'll ask that, did the Beach Club agree to this or have anything to say about because this doesn't have to do with the actual tour boat. It's the Beach Club. We're modifying their actual permit by exchanging a seasonal berthing.
Yes, I did not specifically ask him. The assumption is sort of in practice, he has an open slip, so it's a strong open slip, so I haven't explicitly asked him. No.
Okay.
And I would just like to tell let Mr. Marino know that I read through the seeker, and you had checked no. Does this project occur in a critical environmental area? And you had checked no. I just want you to realize that Lake George is the CEA, and any anything that's within 500 feet of the lake. So that should have been checked, yes. Yeah. Well, we did. It's no big deal. I just wanted you to, just to know that. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the resolution? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried. Thank you, sir. Good luck on your fishing. Law Enforcement Committee.
Law Enforcement Committee met, and we talked about our patrols, we talked about our equipment, and both of those are in fine shape. And we have a resolution, 2019-34, whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met July 23rd, 2019, to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program, and whereas active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full Commission meeting, and whereas the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report, now therefore be it resolved that the Commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee, and I would make that a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the Law Enforcement Committee report. Any discussions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next one concerns the resolution for a long day bank. Dave, do you want to say anything about this?
So a couple years ago, we had the tragic accident up in the Log Bay area, Shelving Rock Bay, and the Commission took action working with DEC, State Police, and a number of others to close down that big event known as Log Bay Day. We've done that for the past 2 years. We do believe that that's passed us, which is great because it just was not a safe activity on Lake George. And we think we're moving on from that, but we have a resolution for your consideration that says if it does seem that maybe the day is coming back, it gives the law enforcement director or myself the authority for our patrol to close down the bay for the day, and that's the resolution for your consideration today.
I have that resolution.
You have a resolution?
I do.
Read it, please.
Resolution 2019-35.
Mr. Chair, question regarding the language of the resolution. It seems to focus on the last Monday of July, and it seems to me that there could be variable dates for this thing in the future should it come about again. And I wouldn't want to be restricted to just that Monday of July.
As council, do we need a date?
You don't need a date, but what you're doing then is you're saying you're giving the enforcement and you're giving executive director authority at any day throughout the season to close it.
Does this do it if we, even with that date mentioned in there, or can we just elect him that? I know what we're doing. We're giving him the authority.
We have the date in there right now. If you want to remove the date, I'm just letting you know that the way this is written, it says the last Monday of July, so you'd have to remove that too. If you remove that, then you're giving them the authority to close it whenever.
But for the sole purpose,
For the sole purpose.
the sole purpose of closing the event, that would be transformed as Log Bay Day.
If you eliminate the phrase on the last Monday of July, everything would be just fine, wouldn't it?
Except for the 4th of July 29th up top.
Well, the proper way to do this, Mr. Eshaw, would be, we'll read the resolution and then you can amend or offer an amendment to the resolution. Will that satisfy you?
Let's do that.
Okay.
So you'd like the resolution read as written?
Read it as written, and then Mr. Eshaw is going to amend it, I believe.
Resolution authorizing the Lake George Park Commission Marine Patrol in coordination with the Executive Director to close Log Bay and Shelving Rock Bay if necessary for July 29th, 2019. Whereas the Lake George Park Commission is established by Article 43 of the Environmental Conservation Law to preserve, protect, and enhance the unique natural and scenic resources of the lake, and to regulate the use of the lake for appropriate purposes. And whereas Log Bay Day, quote marks, was a past unofficial gathering that was held on the last Monday of July in Shelving Rock Bay and Log Bay, and the event had become disruptive, dangerous, and a threat to the public safety and health and welfare of Lake George and its users. And now therefore be it resolved that the Lake George Park Commission hereby authorizes the Lake George Law Enforcement Director in conjunction with the Executive Director the right to close Log Bay and Shelving Rock Bay to the motorized boating public on the last Monday of July if, in their sole discretion, closure is necessary to protect the public safety, health, and welfare of Lake George and its users, and to take any lawful measures to enforce that enclosure. And be it further resolved, Law Enforcement Director, the Executive Director, staff, and council shall cause all involved agencies and any other interested agencies to be notified of this resolution. I would make that a motion.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded, and as per Mr. Neshaw's comments, I would like to offer an amendment to the motion to strike out for July 29, 2019, and on the last day of Monday of July, thereby giving law enforcement and the director the flexibility should it occur or arise on any other day. I'll make a motion that we amend the resolution.
Second.
All in favor of amending the resolution?
Aye.
All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
Done. Thank you. And the executive director said I couldn't stretch this out to noon.
And other people said you shouldn't stretch it out.
Before we go to public comments, the chairman, one of the reasons, would like to make a statement, one of the reasons we were late was we were discussing at great length the recent parasail incident, which is probably the fourth or fifth of some serious incidents in parasail accidents. I think that the commission feels that we've been extremely fortunate in the Lake George Basin that we haven't had a fatality. There have been some pretty sad people dumped in trees, people dumped in the water near drownings. Therefore, the chairman is appointing an ad hoc committee with Mr. Parker as chairman of the ad hoc committee, and it will include Catherine Bombard, Dave Floyd, John McDonald, and Bill Mason, because he talked up on it. And their purpose will be to look at Lake George's unique geographical and multi-use restrictions, shall we say, that apply in the parasail industry. There are standards throughout the country, and the commission feels that Lake George is a little more unique. We don't want to say special because it irritates other people, but we are unique in that we have mountains, we have different currents, we have a lot different influences upon a parasail operation. We also have a lot of multi-uses in the southern basin. We've got tour boats, we've got kayaks, we've got canoes, we've got parasail operation, we got everything. We got tiki, we got everything going on down there, which is not normal throughout the country. Therefore, I have requested this committee to look into if we should propose any more severe restrictions other than national standards upon the parasail operation, because I would hate to be sitting here a year from now and explaining why we didn't look at further restrictions or some way to prevent a tragedy occurring. So it's best to look at it at a time, and therefore over any objections from anybody on the commission, The aforementioned names are hereby appointed on an ad hoc committee. I would direct that you hold a meeting and plan your agenda. I would suggest that at some point you might want to have a hearing so that you can get an input from the public and the parasail operators themselves and anybody else that has any interest whatsoever in this, and present back to the commission any recommendations as to further restrictions or changing our parasail operations on Lake George.
Do we have a deadline?
Next year.
I would like to hear something from you by the next meeting. That gives you a month. It doesn't, as to what you're planning on doing.
Get started.
Because, Mr. Chairman of your committee, most people are here in the summer. And those are the people that I would like to hear from. So yes, I have a deadline for you. Next meeting, tell us what you're going to be doing.
Should have kept my mouth shut.
You should have kept your mouth shut. And now at this point, are there any public comments? Yes, you come first.
Hi, I'm Kathy Clark, Town of since 85. I sent a memo to the commissioners after I read the discussions on the bulk application on the extension of the dock to 100 feet. And your discussion went into the creation of the delta or the expansion of the delta. I actually stayed at the bywater. Anybody? Years ago, where it was shallow there. It was always shallow there, and because of the proximity of my location of my home, I frequent and have had permission to frequent what's now Puggy's Point continuously since I moved here. Over the course of the years, the channel did go straight out. It was shallow because the sediment was going down the brook, but the channel went straight out. Over the course of the years, I've witnessed at least 6, probably more trees, either dead, mature trees, like 45, 50 feet long, and they lodge north and south, whereas the brook goes east and west. With the first one, a bit of sediment came up, so the channel started to go a little bit further. Now, with at least, and there might be more, maybe it was only 6 instead of 7, the channel is going due south. It goes out maybe 10 feet and is now going all the way south towards the Hay Commons docks. They're filling in. Then it rounds out. We are going to have a brand new official state island very soon, actually the beginning of it out here. I did stop. We had a major rain event just last month after your meeting. I had sent the email to the commissioners with a chronological order of what I've witnessed on it. I don't think you got it, but so anyhow, about a week after I sent this email in response to your questions about Delta, we had the 4 1/4 inch rain event. Probably 2 weeks before that, on the esker, it's called Rock and Rye, the point gave out with tons of dirt going into the lake right at the waterfalls, and probably a 55-foot tree was lodged pretty upright. With the 4 1/4 inch rain event, and I watched it all day, was very nervous about that because in the course of the brook there's 4 bridges that's going to wipe out if it gets around the corner. It is now that way. The state, well, our problem is there's a state lane. We can't go and cut the trees down. One tree about 45 feet did get lodged just west of the Route 9M bridge. We got permission to get our highway crew and get it out of there. And we were very fortunate that the water was so high when it came down that I got caught on the bridge and didn't go under the bridge. Otherwise, the Delta would have a brand new tree and continue to get larger. Over the course of the year, when I witnessed the brand new trees down there, I called the DEC and have asked. There's a new tree, the delta's growing, it's going to get bigger if you leave it there. And I was told that I could hook my jet ski out and drag it out to the lake and dump it. And I said, well, I don't have a jet ski and I'm not going to do this. This is your job. The delta is growing with every one of these trees. And I've done that 3 to 4 times, and I get the same pretty much answer that they can't do it. If the channel could be opened up to the natural flow, I think
the degradation to the south properties, because it's our beach included, is getting altered at a huge rate because the channel of the brook is going south. So in every rain event, instead of making the delta bigger, which it is, it's now filling in the shorelines to the south. So the boat dock, I mean, I witnessed him for years dragging his boat in, where I'm glad you approved the extension of his dock because he couldn't even drag it in anymore nowadays. But it would be really helpful if we could get together. We will never have enough money to remove the delta. The thinking is to shore up the brook, but with all the state lands and the continued havens of the brook banks in our high rain events, and we've had multiple 4, 3, 4 inch rain events. It rises above the brook banks and is eroding all that soil and vegetation, and it's ending up in the delta. So that's my thoughts on the Peg Delta. But it would be really great to go back to try to get a permit to get the natural channel straight out to the lake reinstituted, and even that's going to be extremely costly, but perhaps permitting, and perhaps because that would be a Band-Aid fix on the South Basin, but I think it would prevent it from further filling in on the south. Just getting it out to the lake. Of course, you better have your chainsaw because there's about 6 or 7, good-sized trees in there.
Thank you.
Kathy, so as far as removing trees from the water bodies, from streams and the lake not on forest reserve, you can snatch and grab those with a chain.
Yes, that's what we
grab
do.
a train and yank them out, you don't need a permit for anything.
Well, if it's out into the lake, you can't get the heavy equipment to it. And we don't have boats with cranes.
Yeah.
Our highway crew, when talking to, we always contact Jim Lieberman and he contacts your office. When we witnessed them in the brook, and there's 3 of them, very good-sized trees that I've noticed, and I said, I'm going to keep watching on the brook. And I've called, and our highway crew could get to it. And Rakashi, as long as we didn't touch the bed of the, and they have gotten them out.
Things are going to touch.
But once they're there, but Mark, once they're there, they're out in the water.
Yeah.
How do we, I don't think we should telling people to wrap a chain around your jet ski and drag it out.
Well, yeah, well, that's fruitless when you're dealing with a tree.
I know, but with each tree, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
There's a situation in India Brook where it was dry in low water situation, and one of the homeowners are allowed to drive out onto the delta and yank a couple trees off.
So it's the homeowners and the property owners?
Well, no, it just happened to be a homeowner.
It never belongs to Land Conservancy. It's not a private property.
Just drove a tractor out and dragged them off.
Well, this would be a huge monumental feat to get them all out of there now. Over the years,
part of
it
the
would
dredging
be
project.
before it's covered up in sediment. It surely is easier to get them out.
Sure.
But once
they're covered up, yeah.
We do have an application that's still in my files for dredging Haybrook Delta.
Yeah.
Filed by the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District under Mr. Witt.
And pretty much, they wanted to shore up the brook. You're never going to shore up this brook. To the point where you're comfortable, the mindset, even with Warren County Soil and Water, is to shore up the edges of the brook. Our rain events are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In just the last 10 years. It's breaking. I have pictures. It was up to the top of the brook. The water was pure brown because upland of the brook, it had ripped out all the vegetation. It broke the banks of the brook, ripped out the vegetation and the dirt. The water, and I have it. And actually, I sent those to you too. Somebody has it. Dave has it. Maybe he'll for it. But the water was absolute brown. All the water. But, and it was up to the top of the bridges. Not this one, the 9 bridge. And that's what kept the other tree from adding to the delta. But it is a problem. But I think if we could open up a natural channel it would save something. But I'm not a religious environmentalist. I don't have any letters after my name. I'm just a person that has watched this thing grow and has a great deal of common sense. But that's my opinion.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking about what the LGA has done for on other places on the lake. Like Randy, a couple of years ago, just north up, I don't know if it was Mossy Point, but there was you did a lot with the stormwater runoff and into the lake. Where the boat, I don't know if it was state land, but I think it was private land actually. And pardon me?
We've done both, yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, this sounds to me like it's a pretty large project that something ought to be done. I mean, and it's a huge issue, I would say, especially when you're talking about brown water and all that runoff and sediment going into the lake and another huge delta being formed and all this organic matter that's rotting away.
With the increase of the 100-year rain events, and they're only going to become more frequent. We've had multiples over the last 3-4 years. I don't think it's going to decrease, but that's my opinion. That's actually, I just went to a seminar, and that's their opinion. Their opinion too. But the beds of the brook, we're fortunate down this end. It's a rock channel. Actually, right now, on the Rock and Rye, the 55-foot tree on state land is now like this, right at the bottom of the waterfall. And we have been trying to coordinate DOT because the road's getting undermined with the state land to try to get it out of there. Somebody last week did go and chop the top of it off so the cliff may not fall in, but now the tree's going to fall in. So I don't know. We had $1 million, $2 million?
$700,000 grant that we managed years ago through Soil and Water and LGA to shore up all the known identified sites in Hague Brook, 2 in-stream sediment ponds.
All in here got restored with rock cliffs, so they did use it to try to beef up the banks of the brook. They've used some down there, but I don't know. We're never going to find enough money probably in our lifetime to remove the delta, but perhaps together with all the agencies, the town could find enough money to open and restore the channel, the natural flow of the brook, and it's not going to solve the delta from getting bigger, but on the north side of it, but it may save the south side from getting as large as the north side of the delta, of the brook.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mary Goodwin from Hague, and this is a continuation of what Kathy was saying. The problem with, in my memory, it started when the state put in the new bridge about 20 years ago, and that's when the current was changed. And the beach, the Hague beach has been suffering. I swim there every day for the last in the summer for the last 33 years. And the beach has accumulated to the point where I was stunned when I went swimming for the first time this year. It was after that the 4 inches of rain. But that beach has always had tremendous clarity, and the brown, the vision, you had to go. I swam out to the ropes and I still couldn't see my feet. That's never happened. I could have been in 14 feet, not at that beach, but swimming in 14 feet of water and still see the bottom. It's a real problem. And one of all those things that Kathy was talking about is true. But I think there's another problem. Do you have a law that's on the books that prohibits people from dumping leaves into the lake? Is there a law?
I don't think, I asked that a few years ago. I don't think there's a law.
No.
But it's common sense not to do it. I had a neighbor that was doing that, and
it's common sense.
We talked to him, and he stopped. Terrible.
The town has stopped accepting leaves, and I have seen people dump into their leaves directly into the stream, and that's the bulk of the debris are the leaves, and that's the soil used to be sand, and now it's starting to be muck, and it's primarily made up of weeds and mostly leaves and weeds and twigs. So the clarity, the composition, the beautiful, I mean, it's stunning to me that it's changed so rapidly, and with climate change coming, it's only going to accelerate. So it might sound minor about people putting leaves in, but we get the bulk of them at the beach, and then with the wave action, it alters it's altered the soil, and I think it's minor, but if you could start with maybe some kind of legislation to stop people with teeth in it because it's more than just one or two people. And I also think Steve told me there was like a hook where the leaves from across the lake end up on the west side of the lake. And so that's a minor part, but I think regarding the beach, I think it's a major thing, and the shorelines.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience have a vote then?
Claire Beth from Cape Cod Association, and we were swimming this weekend and we noticed green slimy stuff. It's not attached to the floor of the lake, and it is not floating on top of the water, but it's floating in the water. And we took a stick and we pulled it up because Norm Zahn was with us and he was on your board because we thought it was algae, and he said, well, it doesn't look like what they're talking about. We pulled it up, and I mean, it is slimy. It is green slime, and it's floating. My daughter was out water skiing, and she said she saw some at the head of the brook, Jenkins Brook. And also, I have my family renting 2 doors up, and I saw some over there yesterday when I was swimming. And I agree with Mary Lou, the quality of the water, clarity has really changed this year.
It is.
And I've been a Lake George person all my life.
So what you're seeing is filamentous algae?
We're concerned about this stuff.
So
We've never seen it before.
Right. So Joe and I swim in the water quite often looking for different sites where we're working on our milfoil effort. And I've only been doing it for about 7 years, but people like Larry Eichler have been on the water for 35. We had a conversation, Walt and I did, just a couple weeks ago with Dr. Rick Relier from the Jefferson Project and RPI. And they're starting to move some of their sensor information more towards the shore to specifically start to take a look at what they're seeing for different types of algae growth and whatnot. You might be familiar with the new project they have with the tiles in the lake, where they're asking people to have a tile dropped on their dock, and they can start to scrape the algae off and start to get kind of a baseline assessment of maybe there is more increased algae near shore than there used to be. I know what you're talking about exactly with those types of things. And they're odd. They look like they don't belong there. They're otherworldly, right? And it's odd, but in talking to people that know this stuff, they say it's naturally occurring. Anecdotally, there's no scientific study right now, but anecdotally, they have seen an increase in those filamentous algae blooms. People like Chris Nowitzki, the Lake George waterkeeper, has spent a number of years now looking at the different benthic algae communities around the shorelines in relation to septic systems specifically. But all I can do is assure you that there is quite a bit of work going on right now to take a look at that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And if you give the fund a call, and Chris Nowitzki is working with, he's got a couple of people that Brian, can't think of, Brian Matts, M-A-T-T-E-S.
So just call Chris?
Yes, and Brian will come over, and what they're doing is, like Dave said, they've got these tiles out, and they're collecting the samples, and what they will be able to tell is by the kind of algae that's growing, basically what kind of nutrients it's feeding on. Okay, but I hear you loud and clear. And I know from past experience, even at Hewlett's Landing, we're in our bay, at this time of year, because of the hot weather, heat and nutrients are what the algae loves to thrive on. And it's starting to show up, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have never seen it before.
But, yeah.
Okay.
But hopefully it's not going to be that cyano, the harmful kind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's still a bad nuisance.
Yeah, not fun.
It'll be green algae. I just did a snorkel tour of Hart Bay this past weekend. And we have a very disappointing algal growth in Hart Bay. Most of it's in the southwest corner. Where I was a kid, I've been snorkeling this thing for almost 60 years, so I do have a little bit of a view on it. The natural vegetation isn't there anymore. This is green algae. It's in the water column. It's on the floor of the lake. It's not a good sign for a runoff, for sure. In fact, I was just talking to Walt today about what are we going to do about runoff from the storms. The old days of getting runoff into the lake as fast as you could are gone, as we all know. And now we want to infiltrate those things. But we have really seen a difference. And in Hart Bay, we've seen a big difference of what's growing. Most of the natural vegetation is gone in that corner.
The runoff here in this curve is terrible. I mean, when it rains, it just runs right across the road, right into the lake. It's awful.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You need to solve it.
And I
particularly on Route 8, because a lot of, as you go up Route 8,
I grew up in Castle Bay as a kid.
Yeah.
And I remember way back then, they weren't allowed to blacktop anything. And I think that's what's happened. Everybody's blacktopping the roads and our driveways, and the water's just free flowing.
What's happened, my opinion, if I was standing where you are, I would be speaking for public comment. What's happened is, back in 1990, the Park Commission had the authority for a few months, or I don't know exactly how long, to be able to inspect septic systems. And when you take a look at the survey that was done, the percentages are astonishing. That 20% of the people don't even know what kind of a septic system they have. There's another 20+% where the systems are at least 30 years old or not working properly. And when that runoff comes, what's it taking with it? All the leaching from these septic systems that are not working up to par, up to where they should be. And as far as I'm concerned, as soon as we address that issue, we're going to be able to address a lot of other issues too. So you can deal with all the runoff you want, but if it's taking septic nutrients into the lake, you're beat before you even start.
Thank you.
My name is Alice. I'm a town resident, and in this same vein, I was hoping to garner some support from you folks. I witnessed some leaves actually being put in the brook and going out through and actually ending on our property that's just north of the brook. And it literally took us probably 4 or 5 or 6 days of raking them out, but they're still, now it's muck. And I was hoping you could support us possibly with a letter to our town of Hague saying, we need to have leaves accepted at our landfill. I don't even know why they would not accept them, but I think the individual that did it used to bring their leaves, used to pack up their leaves and bring them, but now they're not doing that. And if we could get your support and maybe a letter to the town board saying, hey, this is a problem and we need you to allow folks to bring leaves to the landfill, that would be very helpful, I believe. Thank you.
Right. Steve?
Thank
Mr. Commissioner. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for coming to Hague. You guys are always welcome. We appreciate you coming up. It's nice to see all you guys. Second of all, I'd just like to make a comment on the DEC Commissioner Scruggs' announcement on Mossy Point, Rogers Rock, and Million Dollar Beach, and thank Dave and Roger for all their input on that. That was very critical. We really appreciate it. And next of all, I'd like to talk, hey, Ken, we talked before about the kayak flags and stuff like that, and maybe with Bruce's committee that you just got appointed to, lucky you, that maybe that's a situation you might want to look into, because there was a kayak accident, the canoe accident, who knows, maybe that might have been, but we did talk about flags, and I think you mentioned it about a year ago, that you're going to look into that. So that could be a way to try and keep the residents around the area safe, and I hope you can continue to take a look at that, and maybe we can get it implemented and hopefully save some lives. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Anyone else?
Good morning, gentlemen. Al Reddick. Very interesting you mentioned about the Park Commission in the 1990s of having authority over septic systems. Basically, what happened to that? And as we now in Hague and other towns have already instituted some septic transfer laws, and we're attempting to do that here in Hague, wouldn't it be nice if this body had some control over all of these initiatives that are being done, so that there was some similarity between the towns? It seems very anarchy-like now. Is that even a possibility for the Park Commission to be in charge of septic again?
We lost that battle in court. Unfortunately, we tried. Yeah. But as you said, most of the towns are getting on board, and at least with the transfer inspection, which is pretty darn good.
Well, I personally feel that transfer is a little bit futile and it should be mandatory. That's what we're going to shoot for here, and I think they all should be. But I would hope that the Park Commission could at least offer opinions on this and some guidance if you can't officially it does happen.
Unfortunately, when we talk about changing our regulations, many of you know that we've had a stormwater revision that we've been working on diligently for a couple of years now. And we did our homework, and we did our work, and we prepared the legislation. We sent it to our friends down 70 miles south of us, and we talked to them every 2 weeks about this project. They've only been sitting on it since July of last year. It disappeared, it reappeared. We now have somebody new a little higher up that's interested in it, is going to find it and get back to us. We had it approved one morning at 10 o'clock and unapproved that same morning at 10:05 when an attorney got on the phone. So sometimes they just tie our hands down there for something that's so important and should have been passed 14 months ago.
Yeah. Well, then you would think it would be common sense. So asking for something on top of that would be
it's kind of one of those situations where the town of Hague and your elected officials could start leaning on the people up.
Well, that was my next question. I mean, even as citizens, let alone officials.
That's why we finally got Mossy Point protected, because the citizens said we need this done. And once we got enough citizens beating on the door, it happened. This is the same situation. We appreciate you coming here, of course, but don't stop here. Get your supervisors on board and get some help in that regard.
So, Al, we are hoping that Albany will allow us to release our draft regulations hopefully pretty soon. I've mentioned in the past the Commission is a fairly small agency. We don't have the horsepower to pull stormwater and wastewater at the same time, but I believe the chairman mentioned a while back that once we get where we think we need to be with stormwater, we do want to take a look and find out just the general world of on-site wastewater around the basin. Walt and the LGA did a great data atlas identifying the 5,800, I think it was, septic systems around the basin, some of those, the ages of that. One of the things that we don't have a great handle on is what is the lake-wide impact of on-site failing systems. There's some individualized studies around, say, Dunham's Bay, Diamond Point, those types of things, but the conversation we had with Albany not long ago, what is the broader impact of on-site? We just don't quite know that yet. And for us to get a regulation in place, we have to show extremely well-defined scientific documentation as to the need for that regulation. Otherwise, it simply won't stand the test. So there's a process to it. Unfortunately, we are significantly slower than the locals are, where the town of Hague could put something in place in 3 months. It may take us a couple of years. But hopefully, as you've mentioned, once we do it, it does become basin-wide. So we're on that effort. If people do support the Commission's initiative for stormwater protections, for what we've talked about, this has been going on about 3 years now, we encourage you to reach out to DEC, to reach out to Albany and say, we think these are important. We have the harmful algae bloom initiative that's out there by Governor Cuomo himself. Go on the DEC website and take a look at the harmful algae blooms that are just in the last 2 weeks. They show up as big yellow dots across New York State. So that's what we're concerned with here in Lake George, and we know the governor's concerned with it because he put the funding in to make that happen. We think that the stormwater regulation, the draft amendments, what we have right now, are going to be a fantastic step towards trying to mitigate any future impacts to that, and we've made that argument. We think right now it's simply a matter of timing. They have a lot on their plate. Once they get to us, they're going to see the importance, but it certainly doesn't hurt for people to reach out.
Do you think the Jefferson Project mesocosm will provide some data that will back up? We all know it's really happening and improve.
We hope so. As I mentioned, when Walt and I were talking to Dr. Relier, he said, they're very systematic in their process. They're not going to come out with information on a study that's halfway complete, but I think that's their goal, is to say, when we start to modify certain, water in certain mesocosms, here's the outcome, and that does help support what we're trying to work on.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave said we're a small organization, but you all saw the movie. Well, not all of you, because some of you aren't old enough, but you remember Peter Sellers sailing up the Hudson River and the mouse that roared. They do hear us when we speak down there. Usually they admonish us, but they do hear us.
We're small, but we're feisty.
Yeah. Any further public comments? Yep.
Just as an aside, I spotted and reported an algae bloom at the tip of Peggy's Point last year. It was like a fence. It wasn't horizontal. It was vertical. And
thank you.
Hope to adjourn.
I heard that.
There might be some more public comments, I think. Gentleman in the back.
One more comment? I'm sorry, didn't see that one. You've been a gentleman. You let the lady speak first.
It seems like there's some important issues going on. My name is John Porco, and I'm interested in doing a project, or I'm working on a project in Lake George. Thinking about, share these.
Thank you.
I only have 10 of them. I thought there was only 10 people here.
Yep, 10 commissioners.
I'm looking to start a unique vacation rental program of renting houseboats on Lake George. This is very early on in this process. And I wanted to take the temperature of the commission and answer some questions on what we're thinking here, see what kind of opposition or support we would receive. And essentially what we're thinking about is a fleet of houseboats where families and friends can come on the water, explore the water, and actually live on the water for 3, 5, 6 days at a time. And this is all out of a product of my experience of coming here since I'm a child. And as of late, my wife and I said, do we have to keep going to the Flamingo? Instead, can we go rent a boat to live on, like we do in the Bahamas and in the Caribbean? And we found that it simply doesn't exist. And we started asking around and trying to gauge whether this is something that people would enjoy. And I think the response was pretty overwhelming. So I put a little package together just to share my thoughts. And essentially we're thinking about a fleet of 4 boats. They can range from 3 to 6 staterooms. They have a 2-feet draft. They're very slow boats that cruise at 8 knots. They all have gray water holding tanks. They all have MSD's 3 black water holding tanks. We're thinking about a fleet captain that does all weather and routing. In the event that we have some weather, we want to make sure all the boats and the passengers are protected. They're on the lee of the shore. There's no boating after dark. All rentals are accompanied by a dinghy so that nobody's going on or off the dock on their own. They're essentially going out and they're just putting around the lake for an hour at a time, mooring, and really enjoying the lake and the vast part of the lake. We're thinking in terms of berthing. We haven't figured all the pieces out yet, but we would like to be in the northern southern segment or the middle segment of the lake, because we think due to the nature of the business, it's actually, it's obviously less dense. And it allows us better logistical support, whether we have to go north or south to do dirty laundry or whatever the case may be, and support the fleet. So I'd love to hear what the commission thinks. Anyone?
Fortunately, you got two commissioners here that have rented houseboats on Lake Powell, and I think you mentioned those in your initial.
I'm sorry?
We have two commissioners right here that have rented large houseboats on Lake Powell, so we know how they run their operation out there, and they do a pretty good job of it. I don't know if you've investigated how Lake Powell operates.
I have.
Yeah, have you ever been out there?
I haven't been on Lake Powell.
Okay, they do a half a day of construction before they let you take the boat.
Not on our rentals will not only have to pass the New York State's boat safety check, we'll also go through our briefings as well. So I'm very cautious. I've been a sailor my whole life.
We have one unique problem here that they don't have on Lake Powell. All their boats are designed, they have a forward ramp which slides out, and they predicate all of their operations on beaching on shore, which you wouldn't be able to do on
which
Lake
we're not
George.
looking
You'd have to anchor on Lake George.
Yeah, we're not looking to beach the boats. They're all basically pontoon boats, the same ones we have here. They're just larger. They're stronger in terms of reinforcement, and they have bulkheads every 6 feet. They're outboards, so they have this 2 feet draft, which I think gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of where they can go. And what I really like about this is how slow they go. We want to keep this isn't about power boating around the lake. This is about going around the lake over the course of a week.
In the early 70s, 3 partners and I owned 3 houseboats. And the happiest day of our life in that business was the day we were able to get rid of the last one.
That's not a unique story when it comes to boat owners.
It was a side to a partnership. I mean, we didn't devote full time to it, but the business was there a little bit, but just getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and going to help somebody who couldn't do whatever they needed to do on the houseboat.
Well, we're not afraid of work, and these boats that we're looking at are actually, I'm working with a builder out of Tennessee, and we're building them specifically for this lake. So we want them easily maintained. If an outboard goes out, 4 hours later we can have a new outboard on it. We wanted to keep the shallow draft, and we like the houseboat, the pontoon design versus the monohull design, which gives you greater interior volume, but we lose a lot of that shallow draft. We think this is going to be a great project. It'll bring some more people to the lake, and I think we can move a lot of them north.
So what exactly are you looking from us? Just our general?
I wanted to just get the general feel and reaction. Our hearts dropping. Do we feel that this is good for the lake, good for the community? What's the general feeling before I start writing checks and...
Well, long-term boat rentals already exist on the lake, I mean, so that's not a new feat. Your biggest challenge probably is your home plate.
And in speaking with some of the Class A marinas north, their feeling is that we can get something done, providing the Park Commission is on board.
Well, I'll let you know right now, I'm hyperventilating and trying to breathe slowly. I'm going to need an awful lot of convincing to put 4 85-foot long houseboats on this lake. That's like 4 floating houses. We don't need, I mean, seriously. Now you know how I feel.
Well, I thank you and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But please.
If I understand correctly, you're going to rent these boats out for a fee to a family, most likely.
Yes.
And they would go for a week, and you would say, well, you can just anchor in the lake. Where?
We would have our fleet captain would figure out all our designated spots where they can anchor.
Because there's a lot of private property that...
Well, and I know that we have certain distance and regulations that we have to meet, so we would actually take the Lake George map and have our designated anchorages, and we would route these folks to different areas, not just let them loose per se, not knowing where they're going. So we would map that out in advance.
I think we need more information before you start expressing an opinion.
Absolutely.
Before you start writing checks, you ought to, like, the locations where they're going to anchor, as Jim said.
Well, and an input on that would be fantastic.
Home base.
Your shoreline is so much of restricted state property, et cetera, but my years of boating on the lake, and is that people, even though it's public, are possessive of their hidden little spots. A lot of them, which you're not going to be able to get into with the size boat you're talking about. You know, you get there an hour late, and some guy's got the spot that you had last weekend. And so you get there an hour earlier, the next time you want to go up and use it. It's unique. It's a huge lake, but it's very small.
I would agree, and I think that there's certainly challenges, and that's why one of the reasons I wanted to come here and sort of not only present what I'm trying to do, also learn.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a unique position you put a commission in, whether or not we all have personal opinions about this thing, and whether or not we should be advising you of the problems you're going to face. I would say for the commission, one, we're not going to say no. And we're not going to say yes. You have to present it. I would say there's nobody here that's dead set against this, and we're willing to hear your opposition. But as Mr. Nisar says, just about every houseboat operation I know of that operates in this country, all the way from the St. Lawrence down to Lake Powell, they operate on much different shorelines than we have here, with much less private property rights. Like we've got a huge, fortunately, state land, but most of those state land shorelines are wide open. They aren't very happy places. And this is not objection. It's just for practical information for you. They're wide open and aren't very good anchorages. Most of the good anchorages on this lake are in private bays, which are pretty well. So you're going to face a lot of problems in finding a proper place to anchor a boat, and you can't put it up the shore because the shorelines aren't 60. We don't have
these shorelines are not appropriate.
So this is just from so what I'm saying is your biggest problem here is going to be practical. It's going to be how to make this operation work. I don't think it's convincing people of the legality to say the operation, or just a general opinion towards it. You have a lot of practical problems to solve. You're probably aware of that.
Oh yes, we're aware.
Yeah. We're aware. And from what I've heard, the reason you're here is just to get a general sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See if there are any specific questions.
I think you're going to have to scratch the outdoor shower. That would be a definite no. And just to be honest with you, there's a large group on the lake now who are after us to come up with the size limitation on boats using the lake. Of course, we have to tell them it's a public lake and we can't do that. But there are people, there's some 55-footers out there right now, and people are just really upset about them. And now you're talking an 85-footer.
These number of 85 would obviously be a high end. There's economically, the more bedrooms you can put on a vessel, the less expensive it is per couple, say. We threw these numbers out as a range.
Okay. And you're also looking at strictly limiting it to the north end of the lake. There's a lot of private land.
No, I wasn't saying I was limiting it to the north end of the lake.
Northwest Bay. It's the dark part, Northwest Bay.
That's Northwest Bay, and that's the middle part of the site, and that's the narrows compared to the mother zone.
I can almost be definitive with one item, and that's the geothermal system. It has to be closed.
It is. It's absolutely closed. Nothing's coming out of there. I think the way it was explained to me, the only thing that comes out is air conditioning vents.
All right. As far as the water quality of Lake George, it prohibits heat from being in place. industrial or that sort of system dealt with geothermal wood. They have not been able to.
Well, that's good information for me to have now, not later.
Just keep that in mind, because that's one of the standards, is that it's not, there not be any heat from an industrial or other source.
If there's no other questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Was there a motion, Chairman?
Second, Chairman. Wait, Mr. Chairman, you have one more?
One more? Ken's got to say something.
I'm Ken Engler. We have property in Forest Bay and Hague. This whole thing reminds me of an incident maybe 10 years ago or so when a probably 40-foot cruiser anchored in the middle of Forest Bay and enjoyed the bay for the day. And although it was beyond the 500-foot limit or whatever it was, everybody in the bay was up in arms about our bay. Okay, we can't call it our bay, but the 500-foot limit was created in the era of thinking about a 30-foot or a 40-foot boat. How would we react to an 85-foot boat spending a day or 2 or 3 days anchored in the middle of Forest Bay? This is scary.
Thank you. It is. We're not going to get into a discussion on whether or not we want it. This gentleman came. He wants to get a general opinion, and I hope we've answered a few of your questions, and quite frankly, you can discuss it with Dave, myself, any one of the commissioners, just for a general, not for a permit or anything like that, but just to gather information. That's not going to be a problem. And I will say, there's nobody here that's against it, and there's nobody here that's advocating for it. We're just open-minded, and I can understand your opinion. Who knows? We've had this discussion, you heard it. Who knows how big people want to put boats, how big a boat they want to put on the lake. Yeah. I have the discussion all the time here. People say, I got to have a bigger dock because I got a bigger boat. Well, if you buy the Mohegan, I'm not going to give you a dock, so don't do it. Any further public discussions? Somebody want to make a motion?
I make a motion.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.